All right. Good morning, seventh graders, or afternoon, or whenever you are watching this video and doing your remote work. It is Tuesday the 10th. Tomorrow there's no school. Don't forget it's Veterans Day. There's no remote school, in-person school, any type of school, and then we'll be back at it on Thursday. Make sure that you are not only watching these videos, but you're answering the Google form that is attached to today's work too. The attendance question counts as your attendance for the school day, so don't neglect to do that, okay? Test, I'm still missing a couple tests. If you haven't taken the test last week, grades are due today. They're going into zeros, so you need to make up for that, but your report card's going to be a 0 or under a 5% because I got to put in 1 point to get it to not the grade book to not try to divide itself by 0. Otherwise, I'm going to try to keep this pretty brief today, between 10 and 15 minutes instead of over 20. But we're getting to the part of American history that is actually the breakup between the colonies and England that's going to lead to the American Revolutionary War, which is going to lead to the Declaration of Independence, which is going to lead to the Constitution, which is going to lead to the United States of America. Sorry for the spoilers, but here we go. Taxation, you know what taxes are, or at least you probably have an idea of what taxes are, okay? Taxes is a amount of money that you pay to the government so the government can do things that government needs to do to run. Now, you can go to Hardee's at 5 o'clock or Maid Riding Christopher in the morning and listen to some men argue about what tax money should and does go for. But the idea is supposed to be that tax money is paid from the citizens to the government so the government can provide services to the citizens, whether that is post offices, schools, police, FBI, military, or libraries or whatever. And so representation is what it sounds like. It's when you have representatives in Congress or, you have you get to vote on people. We vote on 2 senators from Illinois to go to Washington. We vote on our House of Representatives members to go from Illinois to Washington. We vote on people to go to Springfield to do work in the state government. There's a difference between those two. We'll talk more about that when we get into our 2 Constitution tests. But the fact of the matter is, just like we have Congress here, Britain had what they call their Congress as Parliament. And in Parliament, none of the American colonies had any representatives that voted in Parliament. And so the idea is we are English, we pay English taxes, and we follow English laws, but we do not get to vote on any of those things. And colonists are saying, and correctly so, that is unfair. By the way, this argument is going on today, where in Washington, D.C., and in Puerto Rico, they both pay federal taxes to the United States government, but neither of them have representatives in Congress. And so, ironically enough, today in 2020, we're having a smaller version of this similar argument again. But like we said at the end of the last chapter, this new guy, William Pitt, said, I'm going to win the French and Indian War no matter what. No matter what meant spending a lot of money, and now he's trying to make that money back, and he's levying very heavy taxes on only the colonies. And the colonists are saying that's not fair, and that's not. If the government passes the law saying if you live in Illinois, you got to pay more federal income tax than the other 49 states, we would rightfully also say that that's not fair. So not only are they being taxed, but they don't even get a vote in that. The other thing is the Proclamation of 1763, which basically said Englishmen may not go west of the Appalachian Mountains. And you can Google Maps and look where the Appalachian Mountains are. You can just look at any random map. But I'll go on about this in class today. But the idea was England was telling the colonists, we have to win this war. All the land between the Appalachian Mountains and the Mississippi River cannot be French. It has to be English. We have to win. You have to put your life on the line. You have to sacrifice your fathers, your sons, your uncles, your nephews, your friends, your husbands to gain that land. It has to be English. We cannot lose. You got to get it. You got to get it. You got to get it. And we fought a war. We got it. And they're like, now you can't go there. And so the colonists are like, whoa, you told us that we have to have this land. Yeah, we do. Well, now we have this land. Yeah, we do. Well, now I can go there. No, you can't. Okay. And so, from the English point of view, they're trying to save colonists' lives because there's still Native American tribes out there who are rightfully pretty angry that English colonists are coming into their land. And so, this keeps them closer to the coast where Britain can exert influence, greater control or influence over them. Uh, Number two, there is what I already said. It allows them to uh, expand slowly so they can have less conflicts with Native Americans. It also is, number three and number four, it also keeps them closer to the coast so the British could trade and make money from them. I gave the example in the last chapter that they were a lot like an ATM to the to England. The colonies, were a lot like an ATM. They were basically just existed in England's mind to make money. So they also start sending in more redcoats, over 10,000 of them to be exact, to basically say, hey, we're not happy with the way you're acting. We are going to constantly surveil you. We're sending in our authorities to watch what you're doing constantly. And I mean, again, this mirrors arguments that we have today, but that's not how things are supposed to work. Okay. Forces, whether it's military or police, are there to protect you. It says protect and serve on the side of a lot of their cars. And the idea is supposed to be that unless you're breaking a law, what you're doing is not really the police business. Okay, if you're walking to school or walking to the grocery store and the police are just right there, like, hey, what are you doing? What are you doing all the time? Okay, that's not monitoring. That's surveilling. That's like being in prison. And so the colonists are like, hey, there's no reason that this redcoat should be following me to and from work when I'm not doing anything wrong. And so they start to get very distrustful of the English government. So another problem is that Americans, because they did not believe that these laws were fair, were basically acquitting anyone who was accused of breaking these laws. And so if you were smuggling, you go to American court and be like, okay, the defendant here has been accused of smuggling, not guilty. Like, well, you haven't heard me. No, he's not guilty. But I haven't said he's not guilty. And so Britain was pretty upset about that. And so they created what's called vice admiralty courts. And this is exactly the opposite. It was just basically one redcoat that would come in and be like, you've been accused of smuggling. Can you prove that you haven't? No, but so you're guilty. Now, here's the problem with that. They flipped what's called the burden of proof. Now, you might not know, what the burden of proof is, even though you might not know that you know what the burden of proof is, because the court system in America and the court system in England at that time is supposed to work like this. You are innocent until, and you probably just said in your head, or even out loud, proven guilty, and you're right. Well, what vice admiralty courts did is flip it around. And basically, you had to prove that you were innocent, which is much harder to do. It's much harder to prove a negative, especially in 1763. Maybe in 2020, you could be like, oh, I've got my Snapchat geotagged. I was in Heron, not West Frankfort, where the murder took place, or I wasn't in Bitten, but back then you couldn't. Like, hey, this guy saw you smuggling last night. I was at home. We'll prove it. Well, I was at home. Okay, well, can you prove it? Well, no. Okay, I was there with my wife. Okay, let's ask his wife. Was he there with you? Yeah. Okay, she's lying. Prove it. Well, I can't prove it. And so this basically undoes the entire system of justice. You can't really prove that you didn't do something. Okay, that's why the burden of proof has to be on to prove that you're guilty, not to prove that you're innocent. And so also, he created Writs of Assistance, which is basically a redcoat could just be walking down the street and be like, hey, I'm going to search your house. And they could find your money and be like, you probably got this smuggling. And you could be like, no, I got it from my job. Be like, well, okay, I'm taking it. This is smuggled. And you couldn't really do anything about it. Cops can't do that. Cops can't come just bust. They have to get warrants. They have to have evidence. They have to have evidence or probable cause that the crime has been committed. And so Writs of Assistance basically turned that on its head, that police were just rummaging through people's houses constantly. And so now the colonists are starting to get a little bit frustrated. Okay, they don't feel safe in their own homes. They don't feel that innocent until proven guilty is true anymore, even though that's English law and they're supposed to be English citizens. And so that's the overarching, that's the umbrella complaint, is that we are supposed to be English, and they still feel that they are English. They're not wanting to break up with England yet, but they're like, hey, if we are part of England and we're expected to follow their laws, the law should be the same for us as it is in London or in Liverpool or in Manchester or whatever city in England. They don't have jury trials, trial by jury. They're not innocent proven guilty. They're having their home search for no reason, and basically they're just becoming more and more and more and more frustrated. The Sugar Act actually lowered the tax on sugar, which is something people get backwards. But it basically lowered it, so it gave England sugar an unfair advantage to where people would have to buy sugar from England only instead of trying to smuggle or whatever. And so they saw this as a slap in the face. Stamp Act, when you think of a stamp, we're not talking about like on an envelope. We're talking about like a stamp, like Mr. Leffler put on your homework probably in 6th grade. And so basically they passed a law saying that anything printed on paper, whether it's pamphlets, newspapers, playing cards, or wills, had to have a stamp. And so this convinced the colonists that it was time to take action. They created something called the Stamp Act Congress and basically said, we're boycotting all stamped goods. And basically, we're only paying taxes to ourselves. We're not taxing the English. And it worked. England lost so much money, they undid the law. And this showed that the colonists are going to start standing up for their action. They also passed the Declaratory Act. It basically, England passed the Declaratory Act, to be clear. It said that, listen, basically, you know how people do sometimes, like, oh, I'm going to do what you want because I want to, not because you asked me to. And this is what they said. They basically said, hey, we're going to get rid of the Stamp Act, but because we want to, not because you boycotted. And also, we're definitely super duper 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 your boss. So make sure you know that. And this was very insulting towards Americans. And so this was just basically, like in old Looney Tunes cartoons where the snowball starts slowly at the top of the hill and turns into a giant avalanche. This is basically the first, inkling of a snowball rolling down the hill that's going to lead to war. So your Google form today, I want you to just post the name of a color. Any color you want, favorite, least favorite, doesn't matter. Just know so I know that you've watched this video and you know what I asked. Any color in the Google form today. Okay, keep wearing your mask, stay safe. No school tomorrow, so you'll probably see my floating head in the corner on Friday. So have a good rest of your day, and I'll see you later. Bye-bye.